Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, episode 169.
Listen more and don't put too much stock in your own opinions. It's pretty common for young engineers to, they know a lot, they've acquired a lot of knowledge, they're getting their confidence level up, and I think the most successful people in our profession have a lot of confidence, but they come with the humility of always learning and growing.
Wireless LAN Professionals is a place to educate, inform, encourage, and entertain those involved in wireless LANs. This Wireless LAN Professionals podcast is an audio manifestation of these goals. Our host is a wireless LAN veteran, consultant, designer, and teacher, Keith Parsons. And now, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals.
Well, Michael, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Very good and very happy to be here.
So where are you right now?
I'm in our Reading, England offices in the UK. That's our European headquarters.
Nice. So those who don't know you, introduce yourself and tell them what you are involved in.
Great. I'm Mike Lane with Extreme Networks. I'm a global consulting engineer for wireless networking, CWNE number 232.
Very nice.
And I work, as my title implies, I work all over the world doing our biggest and most complex wireless projects for customers. We're in pretty much every vertical there is, some more specialized than others, but generally we sell to all kinds of different customers. And so that's what I do. I'm a Californian,
Very nice.
Originally a Californian, but I live in Germany and consider myself kind of a world citizen.
Very cool. How did you end up in Germany?
The truth is, I'm from, again, California. I have, in my career, been able to live in Argentina and Thailand and been able to travel quite a bit. And I just kind of have a zest for learning and growing and experiencing other cultures. And I really feel over the years, I'm almost 50. I've been doing networking for almost a quarter of a century now. And I really feel I kind of fit within the Western European lifestyle. So
very nice. So how'd you get your start in Wi-Fi technologies? Why Wi-Fi?
Well, actually, my start started with Keith Parsons.
Really?
Yeah, working for Extreme Networks. I had worked for telcos doing large-scale routing and switching at the telecommunications level service provider. That's kind of early in my career, and I worked for Extreme Networks, and we were primarily a routing and switching type of company. We're the first company to have gigabit multi-layer switches in the 90s. So we've got a legacy doing that, and I'm always really into IP over Ethernet since the very beginning. So I was working primarily on our switching platform, our network operating system, and getting pretty deep into that, doing lots of projects all over. And we won a big deal in Asia, and we brought on Keith as a consultant.
Okay.
And he trained the team that I was on, and the training was so good, and we learned so much. I mean, how can you not learn from Keith, right?
Yeah.
So, and this was what, about 8-9 years ago, and that really piqued my interest to learn more. I knew only the basics, what a network engineer would know about wireless, who was not a specialist. And with him, I learned all the best practices. I learned the in-depths of site survey. I got, pretty much CWNA level training. But then I got to go on a project with him, so I got to go on site and spend weeks with him, seeing how he works with customers and just soaking up the knowledge. And then my company it's been great because I started off training with Keith, and we have a nice relationship with Ekahau. So I've got the opportunity to have some nice training and interaction with the folks at Ekahau through a partner. And we also hired as a contractor Devin Aiken. And so Devin has been training our partners and our staff all over the world for I think now 2 years, maybe even a little longer. And so I've been able to have a lot of time with Devin as well. So I feel like I've been trained by the best.
I think you have.
Yeah, it's been a really nice opportunity. Plus, extreme. Say what you want. Different vendors, you can have different opinions, but I'm really enjoying because there's a lot of learning and growing that's possible at Extreme. So we have our hands in a lot of things for a relatively small company. We have a wide variety of customers, so I get lots and lots of experience all the time, and it leads to a very interesting career.
Yeah, it sounds very interesting. So if you could go back to your young self, as you began not just wireless career, but you have such a rich career, what's some advice you would give yourself?
Ooh, well, I if I went back, you're talking. I'm talking to my earlier me.
Yes.
Basically, what I've learned over the years, the wizened old fellow that I am now, listen more and don't put too much stock in your own opinions. It's pretty common for young engineers to they know a lot, they've acquired a lot of knowledge, they're getting their confidence level up, and I think the most successful people in our profession have a lot of confidence, but they come with the humility of always learning and growing. And in a challenging situation in the engineering tasks, I was pretty good at listening, but I'd have strong opinions and I'd share them. Sometimes I'd share them in not necessarily the most tactful way. So I learned tact, and I learned to listen and listen fully and speak slowly, as in wait to speak until you know you're being heard, and let your message get across and do it in a constructive way. So that's probably the number one thing I've learned as I've mellowed and matured over the years.
What's something you got right early on, you think?
Oh wow! Early on in my career, I think the thing that really kickstarted it was I was willing to do whatever it took to learn and grow.
Mm,
So, crazy things like sleeping under your desk when a project was due, and really wanting to prove myself. I really had a chip on my shoulder. I'm like a lot of the people actually in our profession. I never finished university,
okay.
and over the years, I've gotten enough credits from various institutions. I could easily have a degree, but in the U.S. system, it doesn't work that way. You can't take credits here and there and just mash them together, and you suddenly have a degree. So I never finished my degree, and in the beginning of my career, I really had a chip on my shoulder because I thought that was an impediment. But I was really lucky to grow up in a time where, and I think that time is still now, really a meritocracy in our little subset of the industry. If you know what you're doing and you're willing to work hard, you can really do anything. So what I did right was I did that. I learned a lot and I worked my butt off really, and I did that right. If I laziness doesn't get you very far, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so uh, working really hard and constantly learning, that's the thing.
So it's almost like that chip drove you to really bear down and learn all you could.
Oh yeah, no, the best thing would be I remember early on in my career it'd be the EEs, right? The guys with bachelor's or master's in electrical engineering. Those were the guys in the telco world that, they're the ones who on paper were supposed to know what they were doing, and I made it my life's work to show those guys. You know, I knew more. I could do some Linux script, some Perl thing, and it would make people's heads spin, and these
Yeah.
guys would have no idea what was going on, or that was a random example, but I really had something to prove. Now, of course, I'm way beyond all that, but yeah, that was good having a little chip on my shoulder and having something to prove.
That's kind of fun. Is there a kind of in that school of thought, is there a certification or class you do recommend?
Well, obviously, I'm gonna tout the CWNP program.
Okay.
That's been very good for my career as I pivoted into wireless. That was really a golden ticket getting this CWNP. Um, and as far as certifications are concerned, I have to say, most vendors have certifications, but I'm really about vendor neutral.
Mhm.
I really am. So, what is it? Is it LPI? Did I have that right?
I'm not sure.
For Linux, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but the CompTIA stuff for beginners is really good. Obviously, CWNP program. And I would suggest, avoiding, unless you really have to, vendor training, because you can get a little bit, that's kind of a little bit of a marketing side, and um, you can kind of get a little bit locked into a story that may not be the best for your engineering knowledge. So, what's it? The ethical hacker is a good one. CISSP, especially if you're in government or very large organizations that are very process oriented.
Mm,
So that's it. Vendor neutral.
very
Stick with
cool.
that.
All right. Well, related is when you say you should invest in yourself, what does that mean to you?
Well, again, the best way to learn is through experience as well. Certifications are great, but investing in a home lab is
Mm,
good. Uh, so I've learned early on. I got, like a lot of people, I started off with Cisco certifications, and building out my Cisco lab doing all the lab work was far more than I ever learned in any class or any book. So investing in myself, it's just like anything. It takes time and money to get anything worthy out of your career. So I think that's it. I would be, I'd say it'd be so much better to. I'd even honestly, I don't tell the story often, but early in my career, as I was trying to prove myself, and without that degree, trying to get myself positions, I was ready to volunteer my time, and just to get the experience. And from that, I could pivot into something that would get paid. So investing, if you don't have the money, invest the time, and if you have both, even better. That's it. Just do whatever it takes to get the experience.
Is there a mistake in the industry you see people making on a consistent basis that you wish you could stop from happening?
Oh man, where do I start? Um, Chasing the bright and shiny thing.
Okay.
That one, where everybody's trying to make money, and so that's a phenomenon. I don't know if I want to say much more. I mean, I work for a vendor here, so you know, I I think many of the vendors are doing great things, and across the industry, not just in the wireless equipment makers like us, or the network equipment makers. Um, but I just hear a lot of buzzword stuff. And again, I really hesitate to call anything out specifically, but I think people know when I hear anybody in the industry, uh, a few phrases, of course, we have a common language, and that's all fine. But when I hear a string of words or sentences that sound like they came directly from network world, I'm thinking, no, no, that person probably, and you should never again jump to conclusions. You listen, slow to speak. Remember from earlier. But I have the inclination that that person probably doesn't know what they're doing. At the end of the day, it's business needs or personal needs, but I'm pretty much in the business side, so um, it's the business needs of the customer, and the network infrastructure serves that. So, chasing this new technology, or new project or whatever just because it sounds sexy, doesn't it's not always really the best. So, stick with the old and tried and true sometimes is a good piece of advice. And so I think that's a mistake that a lot of vendors make, a lot of customers make, a lot of partners trying
Mhm.
to push the new thing. I think the quality is what's important. Getting a quality platform that you can really work with, and you can maintain and troubleshoot throughout the whole life cycle. That's what's important. And latest new technology, like rushing in, many of the top people in the wireless industry say the same thing. Like, getting the AC Wave 2, got to have the AC Wave 2, or got to have the AX new APs. Well, who really cares if their clients don't support it? And getting the very first ones to be released of whatever it is, uh, maybe not the best choice, or when there's a major new release of software, whether that's in the networking side or otherwise. Maybe being bleeding edge is not always the best choice. So long-winded answer to a pretty simple question, but
I love it.
I think that's it. Chasing the bright and shiny thing. I would avoid that
Speaking of mistakes,
usually.
what's a mistake you made sometime in your career that really taught you something valuable?
Ooh, that's another one. Where do I start? Oh well, okay. The first one that really comes to mind. This is anyone who's worked in a knock. Um, oh boy, or in attack in a technical support role. Oh man, I don't know how to even say the story, but remote access, being extremely careful when you take action, and you have remote access to a network.
Mhm.
And if you don't have someone on site who is competent
Mm.
and who has not only that competence but the tools to reverse whatever action you do, having that maybe a little bit youthful overconfidence that I was mentioning I have, and then saying, "Oh, I could just execute this command on this switch that's 2,000 kilometers away and nobody's on site, no problem." Until you took a bank down. Yeah, that happened. That that happened. I was only in the world headquarters knock for a global bank. That's cool, right?
Oh, no biggie.
Yeah. So you obviously learned the lessons, and it was great because later I worked for an organization called Lucent Technologies
Okay.
that taught me really. They were sharp. At least the team I was on, we did things right. Again, at least the team I was on. I can't speak for Lucent worldwide or now Alcatel Lucent or now the transitions continue, but yeah, do things well and always be ready to reverse whatever action you ever take. That would be another piece of advice, and one of the biggest mistakes the series of mistakes I've made when I was a little overconfident.
That's good. Um,
Yeah.
is there a project that you are really proud of that you've been involved with?
Well, the one I told you about with Keith,
Yeah.
that's still a big deal. Those are still customers of ours, pretty loyal customers. They have us Extreme Networks on the wired side and the data center, throughout a very large install of many, many, many thousands of APs, using some really advanced features. And we did a lot of fun tricks to get real time protocols working really well, roaming across a very large and complex campus. So that's probably the number one. But I will take an opportunity to tell you a real pinnacle moment in
Yeah.
my career. Right. So this one will always stick in my mind. I was doing this was when dense wave division multiplexing was fairly new uh, in the world, and many of the patents were owned by Lucent. I worked for Lucent, and we were doing the largest single ring in the world that went from the United States across the United States into the Atlantic Ocean, Northern Atlantic, down to the South Atlantic through the Caribbean. And I was responsible for the Atlantic coast of Argentina to the Pacific coast of Chile. So the terrestrial section of this massive fiber ring. And we had been working for 18 months doing this install, and it was time to do the validation to sign off on the project and get paid, basically. So I sat there with a 10G test set, a bit error rate tester in Buenos Aires, Argentina, in a central office, and that tester was designed to do precision testing at 10G for
Uh-huh.
a single link. But since this is DWDM, we had a single fiber pair that I was testing now from Buenos Aires to Santiago, Chile, which is a fair distance away, and over the Andes Mountains. And so I fired up that burr tester, and I sent a 10G signal to Santiago, where I had it looped to come back to Buenos Aires and back to Santiago and back 40 times on the same single mode fiber pair. So that's 8 nanometer diameter fiber, and I'm sending 400G signal, but it's the same signal back and forth and back and forth. And the success criteria for the project was 72 hours, 0 bit error at full 10G speeds, 40 times basically on the same fiber. So everything had to be beyond perfect. Yeah, current systems are at 160 channels, and maybe even more. So you're 1.6 terabit on a single fiber pair. And here's the best part. This was early in the year
Wow.
2001. So we were working with the absolute fastest cutting edge technology. And I had personally connected every single fiber at every single repeater station and regen station between Buenos Aires and Santiago. So a culmination of 18 months of work, and the pride
Yeah.
of looking at the customer and the customer saying, this is fantastic, you did a great job. And it's just very rare in the career that you get, at least in my career, have I been able to have such a very stark and clear, like, in a real, like, anybody in the world can hear this story and know, if you know where Buenos Aires is and you know where Santiago is, and to think of what the technologies are involved to actually do that. Yeah, that was definitely a high point beyond the great project I had with Keith. Those are probably the two
That's
top
very
ones.
cool. If you could give some advice to someone starting out in their wireless LAN industry career, what advice would you give them?
Wow, I think a lot of it I've already said about the being willing to learn. I think most most young folks that I've met are very eager to learn, and I've been really impressed, especially the ones when you have people coming out with a like a computer science degree, and they think they want to be in IT or something, and it's either I'm going to be a coder or maybe I'll be into this networking thing, and wireless is cool. I've had mixed results with those kind of people, but those who are actually passionate about what connectivity is about, and how digital transport networking works, or maybe they're more focused on the security side, or whatever it is. But those who are eager to learn and willing to do the work, they're going to be successful. The market is just great, and I don't see it getting not great, very eloquent, in the near future, or even in the midterm future. So yeah, the advice is get the training when you can, but don't worry about it. On the job work experience is the way to go. You learn so much that way, and you can learn a lot from Google and Wikipedia, and what is it, a $35 CWNP book, and you probably if you're eager and ready to work, then you can learn enough to get you started. That's what I say.
Great. So, how can people follow you, get in touch with you if they want to learn more about what you've got going on?
I don't do the social media thing that much. They're free to email me on a professional side at milane@extremenetworks.com, of course. My Twitter handle is at Redis Rapidus. I spent all that time in Argentina. Redis Rapidus means, or Redes Rápidas means fast networks in Spanish, or it's a way of saying fast networks. So they could see me on Twitter, but I really don't use it much. So anyone's free to email me there. I also have a personal email, redisrapidus@yahoo.com. So if anyone wants to reach out to me, I like to answer questions, mentor when I can. I don't do as good of a job as some of the others. I wish I had more time to contribute, but I'm always open to make new connections.
Very cool. Thanks, Mike, for being here.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
10 Talks.
Thank you very much. My name is Correll. I think most of you know me by now. Originally, this presentation was going to be about 30 minutes long. It was going to be about Wi-Fi Alliance overview and also get into the security stuff, WPA2 and advanced, WPA3, Easy Connect and Enhanced Open. I think we kind of talked through that enough. So this is going to be an overview of the Wi-Fi Alliance, what they're all about, how you guys could possibly be involved if you want to. One of the things over the last 2 days, 3 days, I've heard a lot of people say, why doesn't Wi-Fi Alliance do this? Or Wi-Fi Alliance do that? Or whatever. It's important to understand who the Wi-Fi Alliance is. It's really a cooperative, a collection of different companies. And the whole idea is global collaboration. So it's about 800 companies, and these are connectivity providers, these are silicon providers, these are device providers, these are server providers, and they do all these different things. They all get together, and in order to get anything done, they have to agree on things. So there's a lot of different task groups. There's an 11AX marketing task group. There's an 11AX technical task group. There's a security marketing task group and a technical task group. And all these people get together live at sometimes and on conference calls, and they make decisions on things. So when you say, why didn't the Wi-Fi Alliance do this? They, in many ways, don't even get a vote. It's the people that form these committees that vote on these. So when they decide that WPA3 would be a requirement for 11AX, It wasn't some guy in the Wi-Fi Alliance that said, hey, that's a good idea. It's the guys in these task groups that voted on this. And some of that time, that stuff gets very emotional and all that. And it's important to understand what's going on. And in these environments, a lot of times we talk about things, well, God, this would be a really neat idea if they did this. And it's really easy to say that if you don't have any skin in the game. If you're not making that client, if you're not making that application, if you're not making that device, and a bunch of 20 other people saying, you got to support this functionality. So I got to spend engineering and resource time and all that stuff to make this work. And so once again, that's a challenge. So it's very, very important to understand that it's not the Wi-Fi Alliance, some guy sitting somewhere behind a big desk making these great decisions. It's the member organizations that are there that are voting on this stuff. And sometimes it's very contentious. Sometimes it goes on. There's lots of debates back and forth. WPA3 had lots of issues. 11AK still, or 11AX is still going through some stuff. And we hear a lot of Wi-Fi Alliance around PHY and MAC stuff. 802.11a, b, g, n, and a, c, and ax, and the security. But there's a lot of other stuff going on that you sometimes just think about. Because their goal is just about connecting everybody, one vision, everything, every time, and all that. But they're about interoperability, and it's important to understand that. WPA3 is kind of a little bit of a standard, but most of the time it's like, IEEE 11AX came out. Let's make sure that anybody says they have an 11AX device and it's Wi-Fi Alliance stamped, that they all can work together. So they have a lot of interoperability tests, something that they call plug fests that go on all the time. Let me know when my time is up because I didn't kind of keep track of that. So it's important to understand what's going on with this, is that it's probably one of the greatest success stories. There's about 9 billion Wi-Fi devices out there. Anybody know how many people there are on Earth? About 7.5 billion, give or take a little bit. So, probably the reason the difference of that is probably most of the people in this room who have 10, 12, 14 devices of their own. Some of you probably got 6 on you right now. I mean, that's kind of the way it works. And 3 billion new shipments every year. Once again, that's why I'm real excited about 11AX, because that'll turn over pretty quick and we'll go that way. Nonstop innovation, primary medium for global internet traffic. It's past everything else. More than 50% of traffic is going over Wi-Fi, and probably a lot more than that in some environments. This is something that was just kind of the Wi-Fi Alliance announced this just kind of the other day. Some of the numbers that came out, the total Wi-Fi value, we talk about this stuff, $2 trillion worth of value as far as Wi-Fi, and that's going to double significantly in a very short period of time. So obviously there's a lot of things involved here and a lot of things going on. The Wi-Fi Alliance also gets involved with a lot of other things, and they're advocates for Wi-Fi and for the unlicensed spectrum. So if you're from the States like I am, they recently pushed and were able to get a Wi-Fi caucus within our Congress. So we got a couple congressmen now that part of their role is kind of to push the advantages of Wi-Fi, obviously the FCC and everything else, which is pretty cool because we've had like a bicycle caucus for like 30 years. Now we finally just got a Wi-Fi caucus, which I think is a little bit more important. They're also helping along recently, you've heard about later this month is going to be, the FCC is doing some investigation into the 6 gigahertz space, so they're involved in that. And they're also involved regionally, so ETSI and other type stuff, so they're advocates for pushing the unlicensed ban, the Wi-Fi ban, and all that. The other important thing about it is understanding the programs. Now, hopefully I can do this. I'm going to kind of shift to a different screen, and hopefully you'll see this. A lot of times it doesn't work as well. So can you... No, you see my surfing dog. Why can't I see my Wi-Fi?
It's invisible.
No. Okay, well, I'll go back to where it was. I didn't think this was going to work this quick, so... The issue is kind of to understand, over the last few days, we've heard a lot of people talk about a lot of different things. You mentioned roaming a couple times. The Wi-Fi Alliance has a certification program called Optimized Connectivity, and it talks about fast initial setup type functionality and roaming and leveraging KVR and all this stuff. And it's a lot of good information that will deal exactly with that. We had discussions about Voicera. And voice, there's a couple different. There's a voice personal, there's a voice enterprise standard. There's also a work group within the Wi-Fi Alliance that's just about healthcare. What are best practices? And so they try to keep track of what's happening with other standards and try to direct them one way or another. That group isn't actually writing certifications, but they're trying to keep an eye on what they can kind of push for with these other standard organizations to help in the healthcare. There's another one for automotive. There's another one for operators. And so there's a lot of different work groups that you ought to think about getting involved with. Obviously, most people think only vendors get involved with, but there's also service providers and others. Obviously, it costs a couple dollars to get involved with that. There's roaming type function. Who's the guy with the German angst? Renee, there's actually a work group in there about how to design Wi-Fi for residential homes and MTUs and MDUs, so maybe people will get a little bit more comfortable. There's a certification on how I should design new buildings to support Wi-Fi. So they are doing a lot of things along this, as I said, roaming and healthcare and all these different organizations. So it's very important to understand what they do. But when they do this functionality, certified connectivity, Wi-Fi aware, who cares about IoT? We got Wi-Fi aware. You guys are all real smart, right? I bet you there's at least one person in this room that doesn't know that I don't need an AP to do Wi-Fi. That Wi-Fi devices can talk to themselves. If you're real old and got gray hair like me, you used to call it ad hoc. If you're a little bit less old, you can call it Wi-Fi direct. Now you can call it Wi-Fi aware. It's trying to steal a little thunder from the IoT world where I can actually set up groups and let devices communicate to each other, kind of like doing BLE, but actually explain real information, not just tell you what to do. So neat things coming on down there. Go to the Wi-Fi Alliance website, go under certifications, go under programs, and it lists all the programs, and it gives you real technical information. It's not just a bunch of marketing stuff that you're not interested in seeing. You've got 15, 20-page documents that get deep dive into the technical that's available for you guys that you don't have to sign in or register or pay any money for that explain, has anybody heard of FILS? Fast Initial Link Setup. How to do that quicker, how to set it up, how to eliminate some packets, how to actually use KVR. Different things you can do. Problem is that you got to push for those standards. You can't just say Wi-Fi Alliance ought to certify that everybody has to do this as of 2 years from now. The groups have to get together and say, hey, it's a good idea. We really want to push for this. You negotiate, you go back and forth just like any other type of environment. So once again, a lot of different groups here, but take a look and see what the others, Wi-Fi certified Vantage, it kind of wraps up PassPoint, Agile Mobile Band, Agile Multiband. How do I seamlessly roam from 2.4 to 5 to maybe 60? Because we're going to have those environments that we need to deal with. So it's important to understand what they do and what their responsibilities are. As I said, as far as the security side, obviously this is a continuing process. WPA2 is going to be supported. It's going to be improved. The different functionalities will come along. It's not just going to die and everything's going to be focused on WPA3, because as I said, WPA2 is going to be around for the rest of my life. I mean, there's people out here, we mentioned yesterday, 11B, and it probably does WEP, but if it's a scanner in a warehouse, I'm not going to throw away because it works. So you have to do other things. That's why you get the big bucks. Separate that stuff out. So it's a continual thing. Once again, WPA3 is next generation. It's a step up. It's improvement. It's making it more secure. I hate to say this, but it allows you to use dumber passwords. But it really does. So now you can go back to using cat. I'm sorry, I didn't say that. But the idea is I can't capture it and do an offline dictionary. Still use those dumb things. Who's the Unix people from way back? You should use unprintable characters. Use a backspace as part of your password. Nobody ever guessed that. But once again, it's some cool things, but WPA3, will there be a WPA4 someday? Probably. But you'll actually probably see WPA3 improvements over the next couple of years. Maybe some of the stuff that you thought should have been in it last year might show, or this year, might show up again. It's a continual process. Once again, a bunch of people get in a room, yell, scream, carry on, cry a little bit, and then we kind of move forward. Hope the Wi-Fi Alliance doesn't see this. It's going to continue. Once again, we saw the growth. The biggest concern people have right now is security, especially when you get into public venues, especially when you get into hospitality. They're more and more concerned about that, but they got to balance that. My grandmother's showing up. She has to be able to get on the network. And if she calls a help desk, that's not going to work. So it's going to be open or an easier, simpler way. Enhanced open actually fits in that area. So the different things, WPA3 Personal, WPA Enterprise. WPA3 Personal was really the focus with the current year. You're probably going to see improvements, as Philip mentioned, coming in the near future in Enterprise. It's going to be a continually evolving functionality. Once again, we kind of talked about easy connects, a secure way to get out of your network. Is it very, very high, robust security? No, but it's better than we have now. Give you some extra tools. I used to work for a company, and we had a guy, he was a security guy, and his whole thing, this was the Ethernet days, by the way. He had a thing on his wall, best security tools, a pair of wire cutters. You know, if you want to be secure, don't connect to anything. Turn off your USB ports. Turn off all, get rid of floppy disk drives, to those of you who know what a floppy disk drive is. The whole idea is as soon as you connect to something, you open yourself up to something. And that's just what level of security you're willing to risk. It's the old peeling the onion type thing. There's always going to be some level of threat. As I said before, with an authenticator, I can onboard an access point, then I can onboard the individual devices, and the devices in the access point can link up using a connector, using a secure type of environment. So once again, it's actually very, very secure. You're going to see it much more in the IoT environment than anywhere else. Better protection, and hands open. We kind of talked about this. The elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman. Only Philip knows that. He's the only guy who ever explained it to me. So new introduction to stuff. It's going to continue to evolve as we go on over time. Obviously, security is a big thing. The big FIMAC thing is 11AX. You're going to see that. But people forget, and go to the website. Go to the Wi-Fi Alliance website. Go under certifications. Go under programs, and look at the stuff. And I guarantee there's a lot of good information. How many people here are flying home today or tomorrow? Print this stuff out and read it on the flight. There's nothing else to do. So there's a lot of good stuff. Take advantage of it. How am I doing for time? I'm done. All right. Any questions on the Wi-Fi Alliance?
Yeah, I'm sure they're going to have some questions. So we have Q&A. The first one is, as you have two roles. You're product management at AirHive, as well as you represent AirHive within the Wi-Fi
Within the
Alliance.
Wi-Fi Alliance, yeah.
So is there not knowing how this process works, you mentioned a whole bunch of different pieces. They're all rolled up into Wi-Fi 6, which is a great marketing term. As a product manager, do you get to pick and choose which of those are included in AirHive APs? That's
it. The Wi-Fi 6 is just a certification for 11AX, and it requires WPA3 to be part of it. All the other ones are independent, and the majority of them are optional. That's the tough part, because there are some people within vendor organizations such as mine that their entire job is to attend Wi-Fi Alliance meetings. That's it. Because there's probably 40 or 50 different work groups, because most of these organizations have, or most of these committees have a marketing task group and a technical task group that do different things. And there's probably 50 meetings a week. I'm right now, me personally, in my AirHive hat on, I attend just about every one of the AX technical and marketing ones I could, and the security ones, the security ones I can. I sit in on the Vantage. Hotspot is being an improvement. There's a lot of them. You can't sit in all of them. But to your point, it's like, what ones do we need to be aware of that if I'm not aware of it, can bite me in the butt, either competitive or something like that in the future. So that's the biggest challenge. An example, I was talking to somebody else before, had somebody in a company come up to me a while back and say, do we support Vantage too? And it's like, no. Well, this other vendor does, and they mentioned it on an RFP. I guess we need to support it too, huh? Okay. So then we actually got to go through the certification to do that. But some of this stuff, once again, it's important to understand that there's a lot of good features in it, but there's no way you can probably get everything certified. Once again, there's probably 30 different certifications. So what's important to us?
The reason I bring that up is back to the grandmother example. Grandmother shows up at a hotspot.
Yeah.
She says, I just bought a Wi-Fi 6 client.
Yeah.
It's a Wi-Fi 6 hotel.
Yeah.
But I don't have OWE.
You don't have enhanced open. So that's.
So that feature of, it's going to be easy for grandma isn't easy for grandma.
Well, as long as they'll probably have an open network, or they'll probably just have authentication and they won't have any security on it at that point. So it's got to be simple. But once again, and different properties, once again, are going to decide what's appropriate for them. Give a little bit of a shout out to something else. There's another organization out there called HT&G, Hospitality Technology Next Generation. And they're large properties, they're vendors, they're service providers and stuff that says, what type of Wi-Fi do I want? And they try to do best practices. They don't do standards. And one of the work groups they're working on right now, and I forget who mentioned it yesterday, is how to define the guest experience. And that's with properties involved, not just techies involved, because I know people hate it heard this way, but sometimes good enough is good enough. Whether you like it or not, not every property is going to do the same thing. What Marriott believes, what Omni believes, what Hilton believes, Best Western believes is different things. And, if you're I don't want to say low-end property or whatever, I put Wi-Fi in the sign, and as long as it comes on, I'm good to go. And others have much, much higher expectations, and those properties that have conference areas have even higher expectations. But as I've said many times at other events, and I'll finish on this, is I've got a favorite hotel when I'm flying out of London by Heathrow Airport that's been G for 12 years. And I was there 4 months ago, and it's still 70% G only. And don't tell anybody, because it works. And I talked to the manager about 3 years ago. Says every once in a while somebody comes in and complains about it, and it's an IT guy. It's not somebody just doing their job. So that will say Wi-Fi 3 on it if they implement it. But they don't do conferences. They don't do anything. It's tired business people getting ready to go home, do a little Skype, and get out of there, and it actually works. So maybe somebody did a really, really good job deploying an 11G network 10 years ago, and the property saved an enormous amount of money going to A, N, AC, and maybe they'll make the jump to AX someday. Or maybe they only got 100 meg uplink and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks.
We can get...
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @WirelessLANPros for all the latest news and updates, and also connect directly with Keith on Twitter @KeithRParsons. Head over to www.wlanpros.com for this episode's show notes, as well as the latest in all things Wi-Fi.